Welcome once again to another Chef Knives to Go Quick Look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we're looking at today is the Kurouchi line under the Yahiko brand that Mark brought in. So this is their Shidogami, our white paper number 2, Kurouchi Gyuto 240mm knife. So that core steel is reactive high carbon steel from Hitachi, also known as Shidogami or white paper number 2. The heat treat they shoot for is about 61 to 62 Rockwell. That's done by eye and feel, so that's kind of the approximation. And they don't put them in scientifically controlled, computer-controlled ovens and that kind of stuff. So, but that's kind of what they shoot for. The construction is 3 layers, so there's a soft stainless cladding on either side of that core steel, and you can see the core steel showing at the edge and the cladding. And on the cladding, they've also put a Kurouchi or blacksmith protective finish on top of that. And we'll get a close-up look at that, but it's well executed. The weights and dimensions on these will vary a little bit from knife to knife because they're hand-forged, hand-hammered. But this particular one is 190 grams or 6.7 ounces. And the edge length on these is pretty consistently. I've had two 240 samples, this and the Nishiji, and they've both been about 245, 246, so that should be pretty consistent for most samples I would take, just generally speaking. About 9.7 ounces, or excuse me, 9.7 inches. The overall length is about 390 millimeters, or about 15.3-ish inches. And then these are all pretty thick at the spine, and then thin out pretty quickly, and then not a lot of distal taper, but they get quite thin at the tip, and the tips work great on these. So they're also thin at the edge, so great performing knives with some heft, and the blades are stiff, so confidence inspiring for cutting power, chopping power. Blade height, or I should say, let's get the dimensions. So coming out of the handle above the back of the blade is about 4 millimeters. They'll be in that range. And then about halfway down, I measured about 2.2, so they'll be in that 2.2-ish, 2.1-ish, 2.3-ish range. And then we don't taper off much beyond that, but then we get thin with the pretty generous grind towards the tip, and the tips work great on these for a soft product. The blade height is about 49.1. These are just a touch taller, generally speaking, than the Nishiji versions, and they're just a touch heavier, at least the 2 samples I've seen. The handle is a basic octagonal hoe wood with buffalo horn ferrule, and they've all been well executed. All but one has had pretty doggone good smooth transition between the ferrule and the wood, and they've all had very tight handle install, so they're well done. It's a lightweight handle, so that does bring the balance point forward on these, and the balance point there is pretty far forward. This has a little bit more mass than its equivalent Nishiji 240 version, and the balance point's commensurately a little bit farther forward, and it's definitely forward of my pinch grip. That gives you a lot of chopping power. This knife has a lot of authority, as does the Nishiji version. So they're very similar knives. Again, the Nishiji version, a little bit heavier, at least on the samples I've seen, and the food release, I'd say, on the Nishiji has been slightly better than the Kurouchi because of the finish, but they're pretty close. So, either knife has got very similar qualities. So, let's see here. Let's take a close-up look at the blade. Fit and finish on these is well done. They're well-crafted blades. All 6 of these I've seen between the 2 lines, the Nishiji line and the Kurouchi line. The grinds are nice. They're straight. The profiles are beautifully done. They've got smooth rounded spines and choils in the back of the blade. Very comfortable. Out of the box, I'll give this a 6 out of 10. They've been very similar with out of the box edges. So they're really ready to rock and roll right out of the box. You can see I've been using this one a little bit, so it's got a little bit of staining on the cladding, and then a little bit of staining on the core steel, of course, as well. The cladding on these is labeled stainless, but it does stain a little bit, so it's not like full-on stainless. So you might get a little bit. Don't be surprised by that. That's not uncommon, to be honest. So the finish on these is fairly smooth Kurouchi finish. It's got a little bit of modeling to it, but not much. And it's definitely a little smoother than the the Nishiji version. That's got more texture to it. Let's see how close we can get in here with my camera. But there's what the finish looks like. I don't know about the durability on these. I can't say long-term, but it's a well-done Kurouchi finish, and hopefully it'll have some durability. Don't know for sure, but that's just a guess on my part. You've got a frosted blade road into the core steel, so it's a nice effect. And you can see how thin that tip is. So profiles in these are all very consistently flat at the heel into a gentle belly. Really well done profiles in all 6 knives I've seen. 4 Gyutos and 2 Nakiri knives. So they flow nicely into a flat heel and about a good half of the knife. And then gentle belly into the tip. Despite that gentle belly, you get a pretty high rock factor. So they're smooth on the profile into a nice stop. It's not like a slamming stop at the heel, but it is a stop at the heel. So should work really good for quite a variety of profiles. Not a complete 100% pure chopper, not a complete 100% pure rocker, but really versatile, well done profile. Very smooth. So performance on these is great. Low wedging through product. Destroy soft product like onions. Are just really well done. So the thick spine does not take away from the performance. It's not a laser by any means, but a very, very well done knife with some authoritative mass to it. So I could see this being a really good prep knife in a commercial environment, possibly. You know, edge retention is not going to be up there with R2 or Aogami Super, but it's, you know, depending on what your preference is for edge retention. But well done blade, as is the Nishiji version. So there you have the Yahiko Shirogami No. 2 Kurouchi Gyuto 240mm knife.